serves as the inciting incident of the entire story, where tension, politics, and personal conviction collide, propelling events into irreversible motion. This section introduces Marcus Hale, the human protagonist, and Queen Sereth, the alien antagonist turned rival. The scene unfolds inside the Grand Hall of the Varelian Empire, a setting deliberately described as overwhelming and intimidating, symbolizing the near-absolute power of the Varelians. The Grand Hall is not just a building, it is meant to psychologically crush visitors. The obsidian spires and shimmering crystal light reflect a civilization, wields technological mastery and aesthetic intimidation like weapons. By opening with Marcus standing alone in this chamber surrounded by hostile alien nobility, the story immediately establishes him as isolated but defiant. This heightens the tension, one man representing all of humanity. Under immense pressure, we learn that Marcus is part of the Terran diplomatic corps, sent here to negotiate after the Varelians attacked a human colony. This backstory is crucial. It explains why Marcus is emotionally fraying. The attack wasn't just a political move. It involved the public execution of settlers, which deeply enrages him. Yet he must mask his anger under the role of diplomat, trying to save millions from war. This internal conflict, anger versus duty, is the emotional fuel that drives his eventual outburst. At the far end of the hall sits Queen Sereth, scribed in a way that conveys her alien majesty and menace. She is serpent-like, coiled, and immense, her tail adorned in golden scales that symbolize imperial divinity. The tail becomes a visual anchor of her power. It's the living scepter of her rule, revered as sacred by her people. The narration even notes how every whisper of her tail had ended wars, establishing its religious and cultural significance to the Varelians. This foreshadows how shocking Marcus's later action will be. As the negotiations drag on, Sereth and her nobles mock and belittle Marcus. They see humanity as rootless things, beneath even consideration as equals. This echoes common HFY humans are special themes. Advanced aliens misjudge humans as fragile or weak. But Marcus absorbs the insults, seething quietly. The author emphasizes how his hands tremble not from fear but suppressed rage, signaling that Marcus is at a breaking point. We also see that human fleets are secretly standing by, ready for war, which adds enormous stakes if Marcus fails. The galaxy burns. The breaking point arrives when Sereth delivers her final insult. You are a weak, rootless thing. Crawl back to your soil. Be cold. That word cold is key. It dehumanizes humanity entirely, treating them like livestock. This triggers Marcus's rage to boil over. He crosses the sacred 10-pace line, a symbolic boundary that no outsider is allowed to pass. This act is both a physical and cultural violation. The guards react with immediate alarm, drawing weapons, yet Marcus ignores them. This portrays him as fearless, or perhaps recklessly driven by principle. Then comes the story's shocking centerpiece moment. Marcus walks up the throne steps and seizes the queen's tail. This action is massively significant. To the Varelians, the queen's tail is sacred flesh, a divine symbol of her sovereignty. Touching it is like laying hands on a living god, punishable by death without trial. The narrative stresses this by showing the court's reaction, gasps, panic, drawn weapons, and even nobles fainting. The reaction shows how deeply taboo and dangerous Marcus's act is. It's not just physical aggression. It's sacrilege, defiance. An open rebellion wrapped into one gesture. Marcus's dialogue here is short but loaded with resolve. You will never touch another human again. This line reveals the emotional heart of Part 1. Marcus is not seeking personal survival. He's standing as the embodiment of human will and defiance. This single sentence reframes the scene from a failed diplomatic mission into a personal stand for humanity's dignity and survival. The part closes on a cliffhanger beat. The room went utterly still. Begins at the frozen instant after Marcus seizes the queen's tail, and it explores the shockwave of tension and disbelief that ripples through the alien court. This segment is all about suspense and reversal. Everything seems poised to collapse on Marcus. Yet the outcome pivots in a completely unexpected direction. where Part 1 was about escalation and defiance. Part 2 is about consequences and surprise. It focuses on the psychological aftermath of Marcus's taboo-breaking act and the unforeseen reaction from Queen Sarath. Scene atmosphere. Silence as a weapon. The first thing Part 2 establishes is absolute stillness. This is important because stillness in storytelling can be more powerful than chaos. It signals that everyone is waiting for a single, it's inevitable act of violence. The guards have their weapons drawn, their bodies frozen, because they expect their queen to obliterate Marcus instantly. The nobles are wide-eyed and trembling, and probably assuming they are about to watch the human's public execution. The narrative emphasizes that the air itself seems suspended, which contrasts sharply with the explosive rage of Part 1. This stillness shows how completely Marcus has broken the flow of ritual and order. It also magnifies the audacity and danger of his defiance. He is holding a piece of the Empire's living symbol in his hand and refusing to let go. The Queen's calmness, a subversion of expectation instead of an immediate strike. Queen Sarath remains motionless and calm, which completely appends the expectations of the courtand, the reader. She simply blinks, her golden eyes slow and calculating, and speaks in a measured tone. Release me. This is crucial. It's not a scream, a threat, or a roar of anger. It's quiet and controlled. This deliberate restraint shows her strength and self-mastery, which contrasts with the noble's panic. It also foreshadows her curiosity about Marcus. She does not see him as an insect anymore, because insects cannot defy her like this. Marcus refuses her order. This is another layer of escalation. He doubles down on defiance by saying he will only release her when she promises to leave humanity alone. At this point, Marcus has gone beyond disobedience. He is openly trying to extract a vow from a monarch while committing sacrilege, which is unheard of. He is not trying to survive. He is trying to win. The shocking laughter, breaking the pattern. What happens next is the turning point of Part 2 and the event that shocks everyone. Queen Sarath laughs. This is not mocking laughter or fury. It is warm, resonant, and genuine amusement. The nobles react as if the sky has cracked open. This is because in their culture, the queen is a near-divine figure who has never laughed in public. She is meant to be the embodiment of discipline, power, and cold judgment. Her laughter is not only unexpected, it is culturally impossible, and it signals that Marcus has pierced her facade. The laughter serves as a narrative hinge. It transforms the moment from a death sentence into something else, curiosity and respect. Instead of killing him for defiance, she is intrigued by it. She acknowledges his bravery by comparing him to past envoys. The last envoy from your kind wept when I hissed. You burn instead. This line highlights the difference between Marcus and others. He has fire, passion, and will. It introduces the core HFY theme here: human defiance as strength, mutual recognition. The predator sees a peer. Marcus answers her laughter with quiet determination. Don't bow to tyrants. This line crystallizes his character. He is not seeking her approval. He is defending humanity's right to exist without subjugation. It also reframes him from her perspective, not as prey, but as a creature that stands on its own terms. Sarath's response is deeply symbolic. She slowly coils her tail around Marcus's wrist gently, not to harm him. This act stuns the nobles again. Varelian monarchs only touch outsiders to kill them, and the tail is sacred. By touching him with it softly, she is acknowledging him as worthy of contact. It is almost like a handshake, but far more intimate and shocking in their culture. She tells him, "You stand alone, and still you do not tremble." Marcus's answer carries the full weight of human pride. Because I'm not alone. Humanity stands with me. This is the emotional climax of Part 2. It reframes Marcus's defiance as collective strength. He is not an individual rebelling. He is the embodiment of billions standing firm behind him. That declaration forces Sarath to see humanity as a united force rather than scattered creatures. The shift. From defiance to curiosity, finally, Sarath retracts her tail and says, "Interesting." This understated word seals the transition. The mood shifts from execution to intrigue. The court is still silent, but it's now the silence of confusion. Rather than certainty of death, purpose of Part 2 in the overall story. Part 2 is crucial because it prevents immediate destruction and sets up the Queen's decision to test Marcus rather than kill him. It takes a moment that should have ended in his death and transforms it into the seed of mutual respect. Begins in the uneasy aftermath of the throne room confrontation, where Part 1 was raw defiance and Part 2 was shocking restraint. Part 3 transitions the conflict into a formalized challenge. Queen Cirith decides to test Marcus rather than execute him. This part builds the core tension and stakes of the middle act. If Marcus fails, humanity loses all credibility and may face annihilation, but if he succeeds, he could shift the power dynamic of the galaxy. Thematically, Part 3 explores respect through conflict and the alien concept that true worth is proven, not claimed. It also deepens both characters by revealing their philosophies. Scene setting, from throne to arena. The narrative opens with Marcus being escorted by elite guards from the Grand Hall to a colossal subterranean arena known as the Pit of Crowns. This ancient structure is a sacred Varelian site where monarchs once proved their right to rule through combat trials. Its architecture is described as carved from volcanic glass, ringed with glowing runes and fossilized bones of extinct beasts, a reminder that those who failed were erased from history. This setting does two things at once. It visually embodies the weight of Varelian tradition. He isn't just fighting an opponent, he's challenging their cultural code itself. It makes Marcus seem small and mortal by contrast, heightening the tension and the perceived impossibility of his task. Cirith arrives overhead on a suspended throne platform, looming like a celestial judge while nobles fill the terraces, whispering and placing wagers on how fast Marcus will die. This emphasizes that this is now a spectacle for their entire empire. The Queen's Declaration. Trial by Dominion. Queen Cirith announces the terms in a voice amplified by hidden resonators. You trespassed sacred flesh. You would demand mercy for your species. You will earn the right to be heard. This sentence is vital because it reframes Marcus's crime as a debt that must be paid in blood or glory. She declares that Marcus must undergo a trial of dominion, a ceremonial test in which an outsider must survive against a chosen apex beast of the Varelian Empire. If he dies, humanity is deemed unworthy and their colonies forfeit. If he survives, Cirith will consider humanity an equal species, worthy of negotiations rather than conquest. This turns the personal act of grabbing her tail into a symbolic war between species. Marcus's preparation. Fear without. Surrender. Marcus is given a moment to prepare. Placed alone on the obsidian sands with only a simple exosuit and a shock spear. The story focuses on his internal emotional state. He is terrified, his heart is hammering, his breath's ragged, but crucially, he does not crumble. The author emphasizes that fear is not the enemy. Surrender is. This becomes a key HFY motif. Humans feel fear, but they fight anyway. He thinks briefly of the colonists who died on Valus Prime and of the families back on Earth who will never even know this trial is happening. This gives him emotional fuel. He is fighting not for glory, but for their right to live. This aligns him with the archetype of the reluctant champion, which amplifies reader sympathy. The opponent, the Maulworm. A massive gate grinds open, and his opponent emerges. A Maulworm, a legendary subterranean predator bred as living warbeasts. It is described as a six-legged armored serpent the size of a shuttlecraft, with obsidian mandibles and bioluminescent eyes. The nobles cheer with bloodthirsty excitement. The pit has not seen a Maulworm released in centuries. The creature's introduction is important not only to raise the stakes, but also to symbolize the Empire's raw primal power. By facing it alone, Marcus is symbolically facing the entire Varelian legacy of dominance. The battle, skill over strength. The fight scene is crafted to emphasize human adaptability and ingenuity over brute strength. Marcus cannot outmuscle the beast, but he uses the arena itself. luring the maulworm near the rune-etched pillars, baiting it into striking where the ground is unstable. His smaller size lets him dodge under its crushing blows, while his spear strikes at its sensory nodules. A crucial moment shows his exosuit cracking, blood leaking from his side, but he pushes through the pain. This shows that human resilience is born of refusing to stop, a trait the Varelians, who usually retreat if injured, find incomprehensible. Finally, Marcus drives the shock spear into the maulworm's mouth as it lunges, releasing an electric burst that overloads its nervous system. The beast convulses and collapses, defeated. The arena falls silent in utter disbelief. The queen's reaction. First glimmer of respect, Queen Cirith stands from her throne, something she never does during trials. This signals that Marcus has accomplished the impossible. She declares, "The fire lives in you, and in your kind." This marks the first time she acknowledges not just Marcus, but humanity as a whole, with respect. The nobles are stunned. The same human they had dismissed as prey has just bested one of their most feared war beasts. Purpose of Part 3 and the overall story part? 3 is the turning point where Marcus proves that humanity's defiance is backed by real, tangible strength. It shifts the story from a personal standoff to a recognized contest of honor. It also begins the reluctant admiration arc of Queen Cirith. She is starting to see Marcus not as an intruder, but as a potential equal. The royal infirmary, once silent and cold, now buzzed with cautious whispers. The princess lay propped up on a nest of silken pillows, her silver-scaled skin almost glowing under the soft starlight streaming through the crystal ceiling. The wound that had once festered with corruption now glimmered faintly with new, living tissue thanks to the human named Elias. Yet while her body mended, her spirit was caught between gratitude and confusion. Pulled by forces she had never felt before, Elias stood at the far end of the chamber, speaking quietly with 2 of her mother's elite physicians. They stood stiffly, arms crossed, their long spines arched with the pride of their kind. Even without hearing them, she could read the tension in their stances. They still didn't trust him. Even after all he had done, even after he had risked his life for hers, they regarded him like a predator crouching just beyond the firelight. The princess's gaze wandered to his hands, the same hands that had burned with white-hot energy when they closed over her wound. She remembered the sensation of his warmth rushing into her, almost overwhelming, yet strangely comforting. It had felt nothing like their cold, antiseptic healing methods. His touch had been personal, alive. "Why did you do it?" she asked suddenly, her voice slicing through the tension. All 3 figures turned to her. Elias tilted his head, his dark eyes catching the glimmer of starlight, as if holding a fragment of the night sky itself. "Because you needed me," he said simply. One of the alien physicians scoffed. "You endangered yourself for a being you barely knew. Illogical. Reckless." Elias didn't flinch. "Maybe, but that's what humans do. We run toward the fire, not away from it." The princess felt something inside her shift at those words, a soft crack in the wall of fear she had built around her heart. For her people, survival was sacred. Risk was seen as foolish, unnecessary. To risk oneself for another without personal gain was not just alien to them, it was almost offensive. Yet this small, fragile creature had done exactly that. Her mother, the queen, had entered silently during their exchange, her towering form casting a long shadow across the chamber. "You speak as if courage is a virtue," the queen rumbled, her many eyes narrowing. "But courage without calculation is death." "Sometimes," Elias said, meeting her gaze without faltering, "courage is the only thing that keeps someone alive long enough to be saved." The queen's breath hissed softly through her fangs. The physicians bowed and quickly excused themselves, relieved to escape the tension. But the queen did not leave. She stepped closer, towering over Elias like a living mountain. "My daughter is precious," the queen said slowly. "I would have burned 100 worlds to keep her safe. And yet, you, a stranger, saved her where all our knowledge failed." Elias nodded. I didn't do it for glory or power. I just couldn't stand by and watch her suffer. Something ancient stirred in the queen's many eyes, a flash of something like wonder or perhaps confusion. Then she turned to her daughter. "You are bonded to this human now," she said softly, almost like a prophecy. The princess felt her heart stumble. Bonded. The word carried a gravity that echoed in her bones. She looked at Elias again, and this time she didn't see a fragile outsider. She saw the quiet fire that had burned through her infection and rekindled her life. That night, when Elias finally left the chamber, the princess lay awake long after the stars had shifted in their slow cosmic dance. Her wound no longer throbbed. Instead, something deeper attained, unfamiliar warmth that seemed to spread from her chest outward. Filling the spaces that fear had once claimed, she realized then that she was no longer afraid of him. She was afraid of what he made her feel. The palace's spires gleamed like blades against the dawn. Pale sunlight cut through the haze that hung over the capital as if the world itself held its breath. The infection that had once gripped the princess's body was gone, yet its shadow lingered in the minds of her people. They remembered how their medics had recoiled, how even the queen herself had hesitated, and they remembered the small human who had stepped forward when all others stepped back. For 3 days, Elias had remained by her side, checking her healing progress, speaking softly when she stirred, and retreating respectfully when the weight of her people's stares grew too heavy. In that time, something wordless had formed between them, a fragile bridge, born not of duty or custom, but of choice. Now, the queen had summoned them both to the grand assembly hall, a cavernous chamber lined with obsidian columns carved with the history of her kind. Hundreds of court officials, generals, and advisors filled the tiers, their scaled forms glittering like a storm of living gems. Their eyes followed Elias with thinly veiled suspicion as he walked at the princess's side. When they reached the central dais, the queen rose from her throne. Her voice rolled across the chamber like thunder. "My daughter lives," she declared, "'cause one being dared what none of us would. He touched the untouchable wound. He braved death to pull her back from its jaws." The court rippled with hisses and murmurs. The queen lifted a clawed hand, silencing them. Tradition says outsiders are not to be trusted, that they are frail, impulsive, ruled by emotion. Yet this human defied death, not out of calculation but compassion. Her gaze swept the crowd like a blade. "Tell me, my people, if this is weakness, why are we alive because of it?" No one answered. The princess stepped forward. Her voice was steady, though her heart's hammered. "When I lay dying, I saw fear in every face, except his. Elias looked at me not as a lost cause, but as someone worth saving. I will not dishonor that courage by pretending it meant nothing." Gasps rippled through the assembly. To speak so boldly was unheard of, especially from her. Elias shifted, uncomfortable with the sudden weight of every gaze. But when the princess looked back at him, something inside him steadied. He realized she was no longer the trembling figure he had found writhing in pain. She stood now like a blade drawn from its scabbard gleaming. Unafraid, the queen descended from her throne, her towering form casting them in shadow. "Then speak, human. Why did you truly save her? What do you seek from us in return?" Elias met her many-eyed stare without flinching. "I don't want anything. I didn't do it for reward or status. I did it because she mattered, because where I come from, we don't walk away when someone needs help, even if it costs us." A long silence followed. The queen studied him, as if trying to pierce through to the marrow of his soul. At last she spoke, softer now. "You are a strange fire, Elias of Earth, small. Yet you burn through the darkness as if it were nothing." Then she turned to her daughter. "You will choose your own guard, your own path. If you choose this human, so be it. Let the stars judge." The princess's hearts leaped. Slowly, deliberately, she turned to Elias. "Will you stay?" "Not as my medic, but as my shield." Elias hesitated only a moment, then bowed with a faint, crooked smile. "Until the stars go out," the chamber erupted some in outrage. some in awe. Their voices faded as the princess met his gaze. In that moment, the gulf between their species seemed to vanish. Where fear had once ruled her people, something new began to bloom, an ember of trust, fragile yet unyielding. And as the dawn spread its golden light across the hall, the princess knew this. The human had not just healed her body,